Howdy, lieutenants and economists.
The most volatile, evil, disgusting things on the planet, humans. If you have a video request, you can always go to assholeconsulting.com.
Yeah, I am gonna charge you, kids. And that is the importance of not fucking up.
You are such an asshole!
Hello, this is a secondary part. There was like a two-part question. A lot of people will send a request in, but it'll have two completely separate requests within the same email. And this is part two from Justin. And he paid me twice what I asked him. I said, did you hit pay twice? And he says, no, I threw in some extra bucks. You may at any time, if we were wondering if you could throw Cappy extra bucks and pay him twice what he asked you, yes, that is permissible. You may pay me twice what I asked you. You can just give me money for shits and G's. That's perfectly fine if you'd like to do that. So all I ask is you consider a future topic for another video. I have some cursory research by one your analysis, how the decline of Western civilization is correlated directly with women getting the right to vote in 1980, which turned out to be 1920. I did some research, and it was the 18th Amendment. I think that's where everyone gets the things here. Starting with Prohibition and the rise of the welfare state in the 1930s. You and I have seen the decline all the way through today, but connecting all the dots may be of interest to your audience. Please let me know if the amount is acceptable. I will post it. Thanks for all you do for the young guys who listen. I try to pass on the info you, Pop, and Sandman put out on a regular daily basis. Awesome. That's good to hear. All right. So how the decline of Western civilization has correlated directly with women getting the right to vote in 1920. Strong prohibition, blah, blah, blah. Okay. There's always correlation does not equal causation, but here there is an obvious connection between the two. Women's suffrage has caused a decline in the West. This isn't opinion, but people will debate what is decline. I'm going to say decline is increasing debt, slower economic growth, slowing standards of living, because technology will push it up inevitably. Long-term stability of the country and society, and then also happiness, which is declining among women but staying stable among men. So I will say that among many other things contributing to this overall decline, women's suffrage has been a contributing factor in that. Not the only one, but certainly a contributing factor. And the causation is that, I will say as I've said before, the vast experience of recorded human history, not all human history, that goes back 2 million years, we didn't even have written language until the Mesopotamians, I believe. But with what we've been able to gather with whatever ancient historical text there has been, going all the way back to the Greeks and the Mesopotamians, has been humanity's struggle against itself, primarily in the form of the individual, the people, versus the state. It started out with warrior tribes running around, grabbing whoever they wanted, raping whoever girls they wanted, taking whatever food, enslaving people. The next advancement was religion, in terms of governance, where, hey, there's a God. Why? Because I said so. What are the chances he chose me as your leader? And if you don't do it, there's always a place in hell. Giving people agency and capitalizing on their desire, not belief, but their desire to be an afterlife, their desire for immortality. Like, hey, yeah, after the lights go out here, a new light goes on, you live forever. And if you do exactly as I say, you're going to have 72 virgins and everything's going to be wonderful. But if you don't, there's this guy with a funny looking pitchfork and he's going to burn you and he's going to poke you and, it'll be miserable. And people are dumb. People are sheep and they believe that. There was also some coercion, like, and if you don't believe it, there's a bunch of guys with halberds and swords and clubs. They're going to beat the crap out of you if you don't make me rich and do what I say. With the false guise of religion, so it's theocracy of whatever religious stripe. Sun God, be it the Incans, Allah, be it the Muslims, Jesus, be it the Jews and the Christians, whatever, doesn't matter. Hey, there's this thing, it's going to kick your ass if you don't do what I say. So there's an explanation. Then, starting roughly in the Greeks, none of you fucking historical nerds, you're like, technically, it was the Sumerians that, yay, enjoy being a virgin. So roughly with the Greeks is where Western civilization begins, and again, because we have it recorded, where there is a battle to have the people govern themselves, democracy. and freedom, being free from the state, where you're not taxed at 50%, which we are today in Western civilization, working for the government. And so it's been this billions of people killed, billions of gallons of blood spilled, just so we could get to the point, basically the pinnacle, which was, I would say, the United States, where it's like, hey, it's governed people by the people. Now there's slavery there. There's a civil war that fought that. Not everything was perfect, but we got to the point where I'd say the pinnacle of freedom probably was the late 1800s, early 1900s. We could debate on that one. I'm not going to argue about that. But the point is, people were in control of their destiny. They voted in. The government was very small, limited government. I know the federal government was only 3% GDP back in 1901, 1900. Now the federal government is about 27, 28, and then you throw in the states and local, and now you're looking at 38% in the United States, or 55% if you're in Sweden and Finland. Yay! You're all free, as far as you think. As far as you've been told to think. So, we've obviously then gone down, we've regressed, we've fought, and wars, and blood, and things, and revolutions, and this, and get the government out, and freedom of speech, separation of church and state, secular government, freedom to do whatever you want. But if you take government take as a percent of everybody's life, and that's what it is, wealth and production, economic production just doesn't happen out of the sky. You have to have human beings sacrifice part of their finite life, their lives, go to produce. The government is now going the other direction and taking an increasing amount of time. And I do care about social rights. I do care that gays are non-binary or bisexual. You could marry who you want, do whatever you want. I believe you should have, so do whatever drugs you want. You should have the maximum amount of freedom as long as you ain't hurting anybody else. But the most important freedom I view, and I'm right on this, is my time. You too should view your time as the most important freedom, whether or not you're slaving away for the government or not. And because people are dumb and nobody knows how to do basic economics and no one looks up statistics, and you're all obsessed about your Facebook politics, you ain't good, me too. You're perfectly all right with the government taking 40% of your money. So, and what's worse is we're going the other direction. Now, this was not coincidentally timed with when women got the right to vote. And I have done some studies going back to like how women voted in the past, and there's an interesting, and I won't bore you with the methodologies, but you look at voting polls and all that other stuff. You had certainly your noisemakers, your prohibitionists, you're just anti-fun women. You had your proto-feminists, you're just anti-fun, ugly women. The famous pictures, no lips that touch booze shall touch ours, and you're looking at all these ugly old hags from whatever, 1925, just these ugly old ladies. Like, who the hell was going to... I mean, feminism was there, it was always there. But and they were the loud, noisy types, and they got prohibition. This is they just got the right to vote. They didn't even have that, and they would still be able to influence policy. Oh, we're going to ban it. So you could have they got booze banned. Our friends since time immemorial, except for the Native Americans, to our friends since time immemorial, they got that banned in these United States of America. So you can see what the noisy segment could do, but that was not necessarily the voting contingent of women. And what you found out is that women, it wasn't like they got the right to vote and they threw their bras into the pyre and cut their hair off and became the ugly women that they are today. They were still ensconced within a traditional culture and a traditional society. So women did actually vote fairly, I don't want to say Republican or conservative, but small state. There was still the nuclear family was the unit. The focus was on the people and individualism solving the problems, not the state. That slowly started to change with the introduction of FDR and Social Security and all these other programs. And even then, it wasn't until the World War II generation started to die out did women start just voting for the government en masse. They did like the idea of social programs like FDR's Social Security, Civilian Conservation Corps, all the government solving problems, the government introducing itself to solve the problems. And even then, men did vote for FDR too, so it wasn't even necessarily a sexual split among the vote. But the concept of the government providing stability, security, and safety appealed directly to women's genetics. And we can go through the whole thing, but women like safety and security because they're raising the kids, genetically programmed, blah, 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 blah. And what, I mean, on the face of it, it makes 100% complete sense. You're going to give us money to educate our children. You're going to give us money to help feed the children. You're going to give us houses. That's wonderful. Oh, who doesn't love the child? And again, they just look at the face of it. They don't ask how. I turned the ignition key and the car goes on. Amazing, you know. Yeah, but you know there's a lot going on. I know. I mean, I dated a gal, never changed her oil. 20,000 miles on her car. Surprised the engine didn't blow. She never changed. But because I turn it goes on. Like, yeah, but you got to. Oh, no, I don't have to do that. Oh my God, it ran 19,999 miles. Why? Women got what they wanted: security and safety, increased security and safety, and it came from the government. And if you look at the government versus an individual husband or father, the government is much more financed, much better financed, and it has weapons and an army. And it has the backing of law on its side that it can, on the face of it, and financially back it up too, for a while, until parasites outbreed the producers, can provide security and safety at the expense of the husband. So over time, and then as the left got a hold of K through college education, I mean, this was not a boom, again, we got the right to vote and they're throwing the bras on the fire. You had to get rid of that old traditional group of women, get them out, and then replace them with the successive baby boomer women. Those were burning the bras. Gen X women, those were tatting up and cutting this way for attention whoring, not this way because they actually wanted to kill themselves. And now millennials and Gen Z, which is safe spaces and everything's rape, and it's just where it is painfully obvious today, women are wedded to the government. And then the studies come out that if you're married and you have children, women tend to vote for less government because most of their money comes from the family. And if you're a single woman without kids, you are practically wedded to the government because you just want free stuff. And I don't have to prove the causation your buddy Barack Obama did with that video called The Life of Julia, where it wasn't painful, it's just there. Hey, we will take care of you if you're a woman from birth to death. Government, government, government. And women being programmed the way they are in genetics, they want security, safety, and stability, and the government can outcompete men and fathers, husbands, fathers, and men at any time. I think it was in The Black Man's Guide Out of Poverty. I'm like, how is a black man, this is back when Obama was president, how is your average black man with, he's a plumber, an accountant or whatever, and he makes his $50,000 to $60,000 a year, how is he supposed to compete with what Barack Obama, another black man, is offering black women in terms of government largesse? I mean, you can't beat Obama. He's got trillions of dollars they're headed at them. And you're just this dumb schmuck with your Chevy who's an honest working hard guy. You can't compete. You just can't. And that applies to men in general. I just think the black community is a little bit further down the coal mine than the rest of the races. Still, doesn't matter. You could be from Asia, you could be from Africa, you could be from Russia. Women, the Gen X, the sexes, all adhere to some of these universal rules and laws, and women prefer safety, security, and stability. A known quantity, and the government can provide that. A man just simply can't, not to that level. So, whereas in the olden days, women still did vote. They voted for I think they voted for Hoover over FDR. There are a couple instances, like I think they voted for Eisenhower more than they did, and then men did vote for Republicans, Eisenhower. I think everybody voted for Eisenhower, but again, you could say, hey, look, Eisenhower, it's a pretty stable guy. I just conquered Europe. I don't even know who ran against Eisenhower. I mean, that's how, I don't even know why the Democrats even bothered throwing whoever against Eisenhower. It was like, yeah, I provided ways. So you could see where women would vote for Eisenhower. But then as time went on and the World War II generation died off and that traditionalism was erased from society and the focus went from the nuclear family and the father as the nucleus of that nuclear family to the state, to the government, not to mention more recently, certainly within my generation, but they've really turned it up to 11 now, a hatred, a villainization, a criminalization of maleness, of men and maleness. You know, oh, toxic masculinity, what? That we want to feel your boobs and have sex? Well, guess what? We don't care if that came out 50 years. That's 2 million years. We behave ourselves relatively well in public, but don't think that for a second we don't want to play with those boobies. You know, and now it's just gone. It's gone plaid. They've gone plaid. Let's see if anyone gets that movie reference, where now you can just make random accusations with no proof or no evidence, and now everyone is expected to believe. And you see genuinely psychotic behavior. I forget the guy, he filmed these 3 crazy women just yelling at him at a Kavanaugh protest. And he's trying to make a logical point, like he has the right to due process. It's innocent before proven guilty, and these women want none of it. They're feral. They're completely feral. And so that's just how that's gone down. Now, when you have feral people, male, female, doesn't matter, they're not capable of producing as much. When you have the government coming in and not only providing like emergency services, like say the Civilian Conservation Corps or short-term disability or something like a welfare program, now it's a way of life for increasing generations. And then let us not forget, that's outright income transfers, welfare programs, not just the welfare program, but WIC, TAMF, state programs. That's a direct handing of money to people. Don't forget that the government spends hundreds of billions, arguably $1 trillion a year. I'd have to go add up the figures on an entire make-work government industry to employ people that have essentially no skills or talents or capability of producing something the economy wants. You could argue most teachers fall into this category, social workers certainly. I remember working security a couple times, and there'd be somebody injured and we'd be watching over them. And not a lot of times, but more than once, in comes this 22-year-old ditz. Hi, I'm with the social work department. I'm like, okay. Well, I have to give him this piece of paper. I'm like, okay, give him the piece of paper. And she's like, guys, you see, you have these rights to have this stuff. I'll leave that here. And then it's like, so they have propagandists. They have like, oh, you got to get on welfare. You got to get on this. Look at all these government programs. They're librarians could certainly be considered part of this. Nearly all of the liberal arts and humanities and academia could be considered as nonprofits, getting government grants. So the government, it's only thinly veiled. Well, to me, it's thinly veiled. People think, I got a job, therefore I have a real job. It's like, no, you're on a government welfare program. You merely going to work and sitting in front of a computer and writing, we will raise awareness to increase the diversities of cultural sensitivities. That's not a job. That's you running on a wheel. That's a circus. That's genuine make work. But at least the Civilian Conservation Corps built a dam or a bridge that would help out society. This is nothing. This is just the modern day touchy-feely nonprofit world of government programs and government grants. That's welfare, with the circus horse and pony show to make people think they're working a real job. That's increased as well. And that if you throw all this government money, taxpayer money that could have been spent, you give me an extra 20% of my paycheck. Oh, well, geez, I could buy a car and employ more people at GM. I could buy a house, and I could employ more carpenters and things. I could just buy some video games, employ more I buy anything where there's actual genuine production, but 20% of my money's got to go to this make-work bullshit welfare makes-work program job where there's not, I'd be okay even compared to what we have today, paying extra money for a Civilian Conservation Corps because, okay, well, they put in a dike, they put in a dam, they put in some kind of infrastructure, they dug a ditch, they made the roads faster or better. There's some kind of communal benefit that I would receive in exchange for that. Now, it is, you are just pampering people's, you are coddling their psychologies so that they don't feel bad. You're making entire entire industries of make work so people feel like they have agency and purpose. And society gets nothing out of the vast majority of these academic, nonprofit, and touchy-feely groups. So this then has a toll on economic growth. And I think many of you may know when I took the rolling 20-year average of GDP growth, where starting when they started recording in 1940, average economic growth has gone from about 4.25% from the 40s to the 60s to today where we're about at 2.5%. Now it's had a slight uptick under Trump, but it's very temporary, I think. Our long-term core economic ability to produce is almost halved. It's gone down by about 40%. And that just shows we're lazier. We don't work as much. We rely on the government more. You want to do, sometimes you want to take out government spending. If you want to see real economic growth, take out government spending, back that out of the GDP figures, and then look at like private sector GDP growth. That's even worse. And then also, we don't even produce enough in our economy to pay for the things that we want. That's why we run government deficits, and we have accumulated a government debt. And here we can all point at Obama, who more than doubled the national debt in his administrations. But here, everyone since Reagan has been guilty of this. Technically, Richard Nixon, but George Bush Jr. was atrocious with spending. He spent more than Lyndon B. Johnson. You thought I couldn't, like, okay, it's not going to be, and then Obama came, you're like, oh my God, just bankrupt us now. Because we simply don't want to pay for what we promised, and while we're also the world's reserve currency, we can just print off more money. We literally can do that now, but only because of unique position that the United States is in. But again, I'm not going to bore you with that. Larger point is that it's not sustainable. In the long term, it's not sustainable. And there has been this decline. And then we could talk about socio-psychological, societal psychological things. Women's happiness is going down, men's has remained stagnant. You could talk about the dysfunction of divorce and how that's wreaked havoc upon now, I'd say, 3 generations. You can point to the millennials in terms of, I know this sounds petty or small, but it's not, in terms of just their complete lack of excellence. Gen X and the baby boomers are also guilty of this, but it's just crescendoing, it's getting worse. It just happened to be the pinnacle of this in terms of physique, beauty, both male and female, strength and good looks for men, and then beauty for women. Obesity, we can even say architecture, although I think the baby boomers really destroyed that in the 70s. I think they own that, just as they own divorce. Every sociological and societal psychological metric is worsening. And it's not as finite or measurable as economic. Oh, GDP is going down or debt's going up. But if you just look at people, I mean, even in the Great Depression, you looked at public pictures, people had suits. When they went out in public, they had decorum. They had pride. They present themselves to public in a certain way. You look at people now, it's like, God almighty, I mean, it's just the people of Walmart. My God. There, proof. And again, a lot of this does not have to do with women's suffrage. A lot of this, I think, just has to do with laziness. A lot of it has to do with technology making us soft and lazy and easy. A lot of this has to do, I'd say even more than women's suffrage, would be the education system being taken over by socialists and communists, and that's not a conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a conspiracy. Brainwashing kids into being entitled and completely worthless people in terms of being able to produce things of value. I'm not saying morally worthless, but just they have no value. They offer nothing to society. But women's suffrage has contributed to this decline. And again, it's not necessarily malicious. I think it's well-intended. They wanted their children to do well. They wanted to help out other people. They just never thought about, well, you know, this car should be able to tow this trailer. Like, no, it's not possible for that engine to do it. No, it's been towing it really well. I don't need to change the oil. It's been working for 20,000 miles. Little do they realize the engine's this close to blowing up. And in the long term, it's not feasible. That car or trailer will break down. The engine will blow. It will need some oil. It does need maintenance. It's just not capable of delivering what women and their good intentions or their hope intended for. So yes, by my definition of decline or success, women's suffrage has contributed to that decline. Our slower economic growth, our increasing debt deficits and debts. I would also say that this doesn't have to do with women's suffrage, but women believing, swallowing the propaganda whole, that their career is more important than love and family and children. I think that one is destroying them. That's where you end up becoming one of those crazy rabid feminists that just have hate and are unhinged and have no tethering to the real world, and lives are wasted. But yes, there is a decline. So certainly economically, certainly sociologically, certainly societal, psychologically, there has been a decline. Somewhat caused by women's suffrage, but that's what it's kind of sad. We busted our asses off 4,000 years fighting tyranny and government just clawing power from the people in the Magna Carta, and now the people get there. Now we lead ourselves, and women are like, more government. That whole thing we were fighting against? I want more of it because they promised me things and free stuff. Who pays for it? It's free. Duh. I don't know. They just promise more money. I learned in my sociology class that you are oppressing me and I should hate you. Why am I sitting here alone eating ice cream with my cats? Why can't I find a man? And that's basically that very simple question you answer, summarized into a 5. We went from Greeks to women crying, eating ice cream with their cats, wondering why they can't find a man at the age of 52-year-old spinster. I make a great history teacher. All right. Questions, assholeconsulting.com. Tune into my podcast, the Clary Podcast, and the Older Brother Podcast. You can find them on the same RSS feed because I'm lazy and I want to pay twice. Check out all the descriptions and links below. I link to the podcast and the things. And if you want to donate or support the channel, there are 3 ways you could do it. There's Patreon. You get nothing for that. You can go ahead and directly donate to a PayPal link. You don't get anything like that. But then there's the Amazon affiliate program, also linked below, where you're going to spend the same exact amount of money. It's just I get a percent or commission or cut if you go through that link. And that, I think, is the best way to support the old cap miser. Tell family, friends, and loved ones and enemies about assholeconsulting.com, and we'll see you all later. Toodles.